to Keep Six, Connect the Six. Tonight, we'll be having a special guest, Ricky Atkinson, join us tonight. And we're in for a very powerful conversation. So please, stay tuned and join us as Ricky Atkinson from the Dirty Trick Gang. Join us tonight for a very powerful conversation. We'll be talking about the justice system. We'll be also focusing about things within the system that our community members don't realize and the struggles that our loved ones go through within the system. So we'll be having some insight conversation tonight with Ricky Atkinson. And I'm just waiting for him to come in and join us now as we continue our conversation. In the meantime, put on a little bit of music here from one of our Canadian artists, Jacqueline, Don't Touch the Gun. As we wait for Ricky Atkinson to join us for this important conversation tonight. Just waiting for Ricky to come and join us. We got quite a few people coming on. Dirty Trick Gang, here he is. Join. Wait for him to come in and join us. I hope that everyone's doing well through these difficult times. We are here tonight with a very strong and powerful conversation. And I actually had the opportunity to be on Ricky's podcast over the COVID period. And that podcast you can actually view on the Keep Six YouTube channel. I'm just waiting here for Ricky to join us. Ricky joined. Send our requests out to him. Ricky. And it would be nice. Oh, we have Brother Louis. Here he is. How you doing?
All right, man. Just trying to set this up, getting familiar with it because it's new to me. We
Wonderful. Good? Thank you so much for joining tonight.
Hey, here we go.
It's a pleasure. We got this going.
Right on, my brother.
Two old head brothers trying to get into the modern day technology and trying to maneuver this whole new system here.
Hey, don't get too upset because when 8 tracks first turned into cassette 4 tracks, totally was different. They want to talk about when it first all started. But anyways, go ahead, man. It's good to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation tonight, man. And most of all, I mean, it's a pleasure having someone like you here, for us to be able to have this kind of conversation about the system, about your own lived experience, about your book, and even about my opportunity for you to have me on your podcast over a year ago or 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Folks, if you ever want to see that segment from me being on Ricky's podcast, go to Keep Six YouTube channel or go to his YouTube channel. I think it's, what's your channel called again, Ricky?
Mine's Flip Your Switch, Ricky Atkinson, yeah.
Flip the Switch.
Flip Your Switch.
Flip Your Switch. Yeah, you can watch it, but you can also go to Keep Six, KEEP, the number 6 IX ORG YouTube channel. It's also there. So let's get this off, off the bat. We got 1 hour. Let's get deep into it. We've got quite a few people on board here tonight, Paul. Tell me something, Ricky. How was it for you in the system? I know that you've got your book. You're doing your pottery and stuff like that. You're mentoring the youth. You're a busy guy. You're giving a lot back. You're still going through your own challenges. We all are. Talk to me.
You want the beginning or now?
Start from the beginning.
Okay, so I come from the most incarcerated family in Canadian history. Why that is, many factors for that. I come from this Nova Scotian family that seems to have been in trouble for a long time. I've had 3 relatives hung by the government, one in 1935, Daniel Sampson, and other 2 brothers in 1949, George and Rufus Hamilton in New Brunswick. And then when I was growing up, everybody that was around me seemed to have been going to prison, on probation, locked into the system somehow, or in jail. So on my way to prison, I was on my way to prison at 17 years old to the pen, but I'll talk about how I got there. So I'm on my way to prison at 17 years old for robbing banks for the Black Panther Party, for a guy named Warren Hart, who was the founder of the Baltimore Black Panther chapter. And he ingratiated himself into our community and then pulled the little crew of guys I was hanging with under his wings. And we started to do stuff like that. We had a shootout. We were arrested and off to the pen I went. So I was 17 years old. And I say this because it was true. While I was in the Don jail, I had uncles. My father was in there for tickets, so he was only in there for the weekend. But during that time he was in there, I had a couple of uncles, 15 or 16 cousins, 9 or 10 friends, and maybe 20 or 30 community people, all crammed into Don jail together. So it wasn't like I was suffering from some kind of disassociation from the community or loneliness. They were all there. On my way to the penitentiary, I was headed to, in those days it was KP was the reception unit. I was headed to reception unit. I already had relatives there, and I had relatives in every prison in Ontario. Therefore, no matter where they sent me, I knew I'd have a relative. Sure enough, when I got to Collins Bay, I had relatives there. So I wasn't impacted the same way as most people. I wasn't afraid. I was a big, strong, tough guy, militarily trained. I'd already shot at people. I've already had shootouts with the police. I was only 17 years old, but I was in that position where I wasn't afraid of anybody. I don't care who you were. I can cut deep and I could fight bad. So that's the way it was. But the thing is how I looked at the penitentiary was an educational process for me to get bigger, badder, and better at criminal activity. I had no intentions of not going the other way. The reason for that is while I was in training school as a juvenile, the books they allowed us to have in the training school that I was in were the bestseller books at the time, which were Eldridge Cleaver, Huey P. Newton, Malcolm X, all the radical black books were the bestsellers at the time. So I came out of training school educated into black power politics, and somewhat military tactics, because that's where my head was going. So while I was in Toronto, at 14 years old, I shot at a cop. I didn't know he was a cop. He shot back at us. My brother always says, when you did that, you were 14, but keep in mind, I was 13. And there was other guys around us from 12, we'll say, to 15, 16 years old when that happened. And I never took a pinch for that. And none of the guys that I was around with at the time said anything for years and years to come. We never talked about it. We went up and looked at the bullet holes and all wondered how come we didn't get hit. I put that in my book at that particular time. So that gave me a sense of not only was I headed for the Black Panther Party and that kind of activity, but I was immune from the man's bullets. The pigs couldn't kill me was in my mind at that time. I was fearless. So when Warren Hart touched me on the shoulder and said, hey, brother, Black Panther Party needs you, it was a ready yes for me to jump in there. And second thoughts, I shouldn't have, because I was in school. I was in grade 9 at the time, or just getting into high school. I was going places. I was good in school. I enjoyed school. But this radical revolutionary movement, not dissimilar to what's happening now, man. We have almost it's not identical because time has elapsed and things have changed. Right. But it's pretty similar. What we're going through now is what I went through then. And that was the pull for me. You mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement. Well, arm that movement, and then you'll understand what I was talking about. And have them on the front pages of every newspaper in the world for 1968 to 1974, 75. That era was what it was. So that's my penitentiary experience. And because I was a leader and I went to jail and I was this guy that was fearless, like you, and that's why I admire you. I fought for the rights of the guys that were affected by the prison system. So we fought for things. We fought for, we'll say, the Muslim diets that we have now. We fought for that then because there was Muslim guys around us. And then so all the hair care products, the skin care products, all this stuff that the generations can now benefit from, we fought for. In my book, I talk about fighting for an Afro pick comb in the Don jail because they wouldn't give us one. And Edwin Hogan and Harold Barnes were the proponents behind that. They were Americans screaming for their rights. And the administration caved in and allowed us to have those plastic pick combs, which made a difference when you're going to court and trying to present yourself decently to try to beat your beef or at least get some kind of a semblance of sympathy from the man. You know what I mean?
Right. So give me an idea. When we're talking about all this taking place, what year, going back, were you, in this position? Like this is all taking place.
I started my gang in grade 1. So all you people up there, especially the parents, I'm a grandparent now, wake up. Wake the hell up, man. My crew started in grade 1. We were stabbing at each other in grade 2, grade 3. I got stab wounds on my body, and so does all the guys I was hanging around from when we were 9, 10 years old. We started shooting people when we were 13, 14, 15 years old. So it's not like this generation has it up on something. Our generation did the same thing around the same kind of atmospheric time. We did it. So 1968 to the mid-70s, but 1965, I was arrested and taken to the police station and rolled that roll. My cousin Junior, in my book I put, they slapped him out because he kicked the cop in the nuts when they arrested him. He didn't know who the cop was. He kicked him to try to get away, screaming, help, help. He said at the time, help, help, rapist, rapist. And then they flashed their badges and everybody left us to the mercy of the police. I was picked up by Bert Novus, who I talk about in my book because he's one of those tough, no-nonsense cops on the hold-up squad. The hold-up squad then was the SWAT team. They didn't have a SWAT team. The hold-up squad was the SWAT team. It was the hold-up squad that hunted down the Brinks truck robbers, the cop killers, the bank robbers, the revolutionaries, the terrorists at the time.
So with that said, what between now and then, how has the system changed? Like you guys were fighting for the things that we're seeing today. Like I remember when individual had to put a request in to, and then the lieutenant or the sergeant would take you to make that phone call. Now there's phones in the range and so forth, right?
Okay, so that's a twofold coin always. There's two sides to always look at it. So what they did is they give greater access to your family members via the phone calls. And when Crime Stoppers first started, they put up a post that the greater majority of their Crime Stopper tips came from the Don jail, from that system that they just implemented. So there's the two sides to that coin. So what it was is prior to that, like you mentioned, you didn't have open visits. You didn't have conjugal visits. You didn't have touch visits of any kind. However, in the Don jail at that time, Harold Barnes and Edwin Hogan, because they had that position of political power, was that people were demonstrating outside the prison for their freedom and for their rights. They were able to get open visits, and they allowed that somewhat a little through the history of the Don jail, the East Detention Center, and I think even in the West you could get it for a period of time, and that sort of like cools down. People think it opens up and lessens security, but it doesn't have the opposite effects. It heightens the security in the institution because the guys tend to police themselves, wanting not to lose those privileges. So it's like, hey man, don't smoke that joint right now, man. Wait for the man to leave. So we don't want no heat on the range. Versus now, who gives a shit, right? Because you don't get anything, and when you don't get anything, who gives a shit? And you don't. And who are you to tell me what to do when we're not getting anything? A maximum security Millhaven kind of attitude. When Millhaven first opened, go ahead.
Right now, as it stands now, we have a lot of abuse. Like I think, if not mistaken, just off the top of my head, I don't have the actual documents in front of me, but we have about 8 or 9 individuals that has reached out to us for help because of guys being beaten in the Toronto East Detention Center right now, wrists been broken, guards covering it up, and so forth. We're reaching out to their lawyer. and so forth, trying to help them. How have things changed? Has things even changed from 1965 or 64 to
In
2022?
in 1987, my brother was beaten up in the East Detention Center, and the guards that beat him up said, "That's for your brother." It was a message for me because we were causing a lot of problems. We were being task forced everywhere. My brother then came to court the next day, and you can Google this because it's in the newspaper. It's the first time in Canadian history that a courtroom has been shut down because of the riotous action of the inmates in the cells. We went into the walls. We were able to pull stuff off. We were in 25 court at the time, if you know the city hall where that was. But anyways, I asked the judge. My brother was bleeding from his ears, and I said, my brother has to go to hospital, and he was leaning towards whatever the task force guys were saying. So we just went, we kicked it off. They thought we were in the ducks. We had pipes. We pulled the bars apart. It was a riot. And they shut down that area. They'll shut down the whole downtown. That was our response to someone beating one of us. And the reason we could do that at the time is because I had the numbers. I had the guys in each jail who would risk their life in order, because we grew up together. They would risk their lives in order to right the wrong. And that's what it took at the time. So when you talk about, we'll use Martin Luther King. He had seminars teaching groups on how to do time, how to comport yourself while doing time. Of course, then you had the backing of his organization outside the prison, all that they can do for you. That was the stuff that was happening then. The abuse by guards, you talk 1965, no different. I was in the Don in 1972, so not much difference from 1972 to 1987 when they beat my brother in the East Detention Center to, we'll say, 1997 when same, I was in the West or someplace. I've been in too many jails, man. I was in one of those jails at the time and watched the same stuff happen. So what it is in prison, when you have these kind of altercations, often they blame the guys for their inability to control the unit, the range or the section of prison that they're talking about. So they use the heavy hand. They do that in the federal system also. Millhaven, Collins Bay, you would have saw that, because the heavy hand works for them for a short period of time. When the heavy hand prolongs itself, that's when you start getting problems with mental illness, with guys being suicidal in terms of attacking the man, attacking each other, guys losing hope, losing their families, therefore losing hope of getting out. They don't care if they get out. So then they're problematic. And the guards react to what they consider problematic guys, 8 or 9 of them you're talking about, with this heavy hand. That happens cyclically through history. And it happens because they lose their ability to create in a prison system this attitude of, you do your time, we won't bother you. You don't mess with us, we won't bother you. You don't kill each other, you don't do this against each other, we won't bother you. Versus, I'll use an example, is Pete Charlebrook, because I talk about him a lot. He beat up the warden in Millhaven for those activities. So he came to the committee and he said, what will happen to me if I punch out the warden? And we're like, never been done before, we don't know. He went out to end control and the warden said, Mr. Kobe, he goes, Pete, come here. And it was all over your buttons. Do up your button, tie up your shoes, or you get written up, you lose a day of good time. And he got tired of that, so he punched the warden out in order for that rule to change.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that it took. Now, in the absence of that, the grievance system was created so that you could file grievances. They will respond to the grievances. The ombudsman was created in the Ontario prison system, so you can call the ombudsman and he will respond to those complaints. They become, over time, not very effective because they're swamped. Their whole offices are swamped with requests because all this shit is going on. Here's the other thing I say. And I know what I'm talking about. The buying off of officers to secure goodies in the institution, albeit whether it's drugs, weapons, whatever, cell phones, whatever. That then heightens the paranoia within the institution and also the guards picking and taking sides. They become less effective as a cohesive unit, and the guys inside start breaking up into little cliques and groups to protect themselves against what they know is lawlessness amongst them. And they don't feel protected, so they kind of click up and gang up. That's what caused the KP riot in 1971, and it's happening now in a small sense here in Ontario. You would say a big sense because you're more involved in it, but I look at the bigger picture. So look at all the Ontario jails and see what's going on. Just don't pick 2 or 3. And again, there is a difference because when I first came into the system, it was rare for you to be sent to Sudbury, to Windsor, to Kingston. Now they have the super jail, so you're shipped out of the city, harder for your families to visit you, and they transfer you easier. You know, the ghost chain syndrome, right?
Right.
And they use that ghost chain as punishment, not realizing that not only does it punish the person that's on the ghost train, it punishes his family, his lawyers, and society in general, because it costs more money to do that. But that's the way they curb the problems within the jail, but more so, it's the way to keep jails that empty filled. So we'll say in Sault Ste. Marie, there's not a lot of guys in their jail because crime's gone down for some reason in that neighborhood. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of guys from Toronto shipped up there. It's only to fill bed spaces.
Right.
That's all it's for. And provide jobs for the guys that are transporting you and jobs for the guys that have to watch over you. That's all that's about. It's not about security. It's not about the safety of society. It's about their strong union, pushing and playing that game. So likewise, their unions are in that same position to push and pull and tweak what goes on in various institutions. And some institutions, because of the character of the guys there or the type of guys that are there, then they have the ability to push in because they think nobody gives a shit about those guys. And I'll say this, if there's guys you're talking about shot and killed kids or shot and killed women, who really gives a shit about them, man? And
Right.
that's what you're up against. So those guys there draw unnatural heat. I would say unnatural heat because the guys beside them didn't deserve the heat because of who they are. If you're on a range, and I was on a range with 4 cop killers. This was in Millhaven. So you could imagine the heat that came down when it came down was just slightly different than the heat that went to the other ranges. And we understood that because we were who we were. And we understood that, yeah.
So one of the things now, my concern is the mental health aspect, because when I hear from, or when we hear from these individuals, the mental health played a big role. We have guys who, let's call it out, at the Toronto East. They've been locked up, haven't had showers for 7-10 days. Guys haven't even seen fresh air or seen outside in 30 odd days. Now, they're calling it a max unit. And apparently the guys are supposed to be out for 2 hours per day. Now, last I knew, segregation was something that they abolished because, you know, there's enough lawsuits going on. There is the mental health aspect. So how can you talk about in the system? I've sat at tables where I hear this saying, well, reintegration back in the community, right? So how are we talking about reintegration when you're doing so much damage to these individuals, the mental health aspect?
Here's the thing that one should look at mostly. There's guys on that unit you're talking about, i.e. the max unit, who committed the crimes they did, may or may not plead guilty, may or not be found guilty, are going to the penitentiary. They're suffering mental illness by the fact that they're locked up in that type of security. But think of the guys who are going to beat their charges, who are not guilty, who are also on that range, who are suffering likewise all the pain and punishment that their brothers are suffering on each side of them. Think of the mental illness of those guys that they're saying to themselves, why am I here? I stole a newspaper and I'm being treated like I killed the president of the United States. Think of the mental illness in those guys being exacerbated. And the thing is, they're going to be released into society. They're going to get out. You don't know how many amongst them on that particular unit are going to get out. And they're going to get out unhealthy. They then, in fact, might come back as the guys that are on the other end of the range, the guys that are guilty, the guys that are in there for something. They might end up like one of those guys because they come out untreated. And that's the difference of being in the provincial institutions versus the federal institutions. The federal institutions, you're there longer, you have more access to mental health initiative programs, work-related programs, stuff to do. hobbycraft stuff to do. In the federal penitentiary, they give you weapons when you first go in there. You're going to kill someone, you're going to do it. You have the time, and if you have the anger to do it, you're going to do it. They just hope that they can get to you before you do it and change your ways. If they can't manage you, then they put you on one of those units. They put you in a max unit. If they can't handle you in a maximum security unit, they put you in a special handling unit. And now you're in the SHU. So when I first went there, the SHU was 4 years on phases, 1, 2, 3, 4, or that was it. You had to do something else, get reshoot, which you had to go back to court to get reshoot. Now it's 10 years with no phases. So you could be in the SHU now for 10 years because you got in a fist fight with somebody somewhere, and you're in with guys that might have killed guys, and they're bent on doing it again. So I was locked up with a guy who had to kill someone every year because he had the death penalty in the United States, and he was afraid that if he wasn't always going to court, that he would get deported and then executed. So he said to himself, it's better I kill a Canadian every year and go to court than myself get deported and executed. Right. So that's the kind of insanity you're up against at all times. So this is what I say, is the majority of the guys, the 90%, 93% of the guys aren't those guys. They're average guys like you. And they're the guys that are going to transition through the system. You're either going to get out healthy or you're not. That's the crapshoot. You're either going to go through the system and it's going to help you, or it's going to hurt you. And if it hurts you, then the chance of you coming back are greater, and expenses to Canadian tax dollars are greater. If the going through the system helps you, whatever happens to you helps you, then you are not part of that statistic, a recidivist statistic that comes back. And you're good to go. Even though you may be damaged, you're still good to go. The chance of you committing another crime or hurting someone's pretty slim, although you may be mentally damaged from your experience.
So how do you feel about the fact that you have someone caged up and living like that, and then you're letting them out of society and then expect them to just function normal, or you say, well, welcome back, just go on about your business now? Because to me, like from my personal experience, I've seen where if it wasn't taking the time to look at yourself and work at transforming yourself to be what you call normal, because remember, the programs that they have or whatever they offer you, it's one size fit all. Right?
Well, they didn't have any. They said they had no programs for criminals like me. That's exactly what they said to me. And I had to go the 20-something years through the system before I could push into the AAA program to get a program, because it kind of fit me. But they were resisting giving me that program. And they kept saying there's no programs that fit you, so you're untreatable. There's nothing we could do to help you. Time is your only essence. And I'm like, okay. So I was in the Don jail with guys, life bits, and I watched them walk out on life 10, life 12s, right? So that kind of stuff, right? Because there was nothing to help me. So I understand what you're saying. So when a person gets out, and what you're saying, it's either because of the system that he's okay, or in spite of the system that he's okay, because the system didn't help him change his way one iota, either or. He changed himself. He flipped his own switch.
Right.
And if he doesn't flip his switch, then there's a lot of pain and suffering. He goes through, his family goes through, the court system goes through, the taxpayer goes through, and maybe innocent victims of his anger and rage and psychopathy. He might have turned into a psychopath in prison. And now he might turn into a serial killer. He might turn into a spree killer. For sure, he's angry. And he has to control that anger. Again, in spite of the system or because of the system, can he do that? Most people in Canada, whether it's because of the system or in spite of the system, they flip their switch around. Most people I know have. Very few people were repeat offenders like me. I had multiple shootouts with the police, as if one shootout wasn't good enough for me or didn't teach me a lesson. One 25-year sentence wasn't good for me. One 10-year sentence wasn't good to me. One 50-year sentence on top of it. So I was one of those guys that the system didn't help me out, although the tools were there. And I was one of those guys, in spite of the system, I'm going to still do what I'm going to do. That's mental illness. I look at it and say it now.
Right.
That for the duration of my criminality, I was crazier than a bed bug, man.
Right, and I agree with you. But 1 second here, I have a question for you.
Yep.
The question is from Lindsay. Okay, so she's asking, Ricky, what would you say to young men inside? What is one message? What would be one message you would want to tell them to hear? You'd want them to hear.
Okay, so it's all self-esteem. If you think the man is trying to crush you down and put you down so that you can't succeed when you get out, because that's the game, then you do everything you can to prove him wrong by taking the courses you're supposed to take, by disciplining yourself in methods of discipline. In other words, don't let the jail do your time. You do the time. You get up and do the time you have to do by doing the stuff you have to do. In other words, Elijah Muhammad taught the same thing. Malcolm X taught the same thing. And all those guys in the past taught how to comport yourself and do that time. Make the time work for you. When you try to make the time work for you, and I don't know if you will agree on this or not, but while I was in prison, I didn't have enough time in the day to do my time. I found out I was at 2, 3 in the morning and I had to force myself to go to sleep because I had so much to do in that little box that I was in for 33 years. I made everything I could work for me. I did hobby crafts. I went to school. I engaged in every program I could engage in terms of chapel, music, hobby craft, art, inmate committee, law clerk, everything to be busy. I just didn't say to sit there, play dominoes, play cards, twiddle my thumbs. I just didn't do that. I didn't let the man beat me at that.
Right.
I got up every morning and I said, I'm going to do this. And
I can clearly relate to it because I recall going through my own challenges. I spent a lot of my time doing a lot of reading, a lot of writing. I mean, I had grievances on my table or on my bed. I'll be sitting there writing them up and, doing rough copies and trying to put it together to file them, right, or help someone else. So,
and the other thing, I'll answer that question again, because here's how you traverse the madness. Don't let other people pull you into their anger. There's some guys that aren't happy unless everybody in the unit is unhappy. Those are the guys you don't want to be with, you don't want to hang with, so have the strength to pull yourself away from the bullshit. When I've been around guys that said, let's kill a pig, let's kill a guard. And in '82 they did. They killed guards in both Archambault and in Millhaven. And you got guys talking like that all the time. That's their personal anger. Those same guards, years and years, those same guys, years and years later, begging for paroles, begging to get out, because whatever anger they had at that time had dissipated. The reason for their anger now gone. And that's the whole thing. So in a situation where you're with a crew of guys, anger erupts. One action of one of those guys can set you back 20 years, 15 years. And the guy that created the mayhem, the one who was the angry guy, he may slip out, man. And now the finger's pointed at you. And that happened to me enough times where the guys around me did stuff. And then I'm looked at as I organized it. I was behind it. I was part of it. When really I didn't give a shit one way or the other. That was his problem that he had created for himself. I just wanted to make sure that it was one-on-one and fair. That kind of stuff, right?
What do you say now when it comes to, because now within inside itself, it's a younger generation. There's no solidarity. You might have one guy on a unit now who standing up.
Let me tell you something. Let me say this to you because I know my shit. I know what I'm talking about. Most federal prisons across the country are 75% PC to 85% PC. The maximum security ones would be 50%, 60%. Now, I'm going to give you an example of that. There was a murder in Millhaven. The OPP came on the news, on our institutional radio system, and addressed the prison population. I'm freaked out to this day. And said, can you please stop sending us kites? Information about the murder, we have enough. Can you imagine that? So many, there's only 220 guys in the prison population. So many nights, so many kites went in from the most solid prison in Canada. It's not the most solid prison in Canada. Every prison in Canada is 50 or 60% PC, which means guys that have sought protective custody because they did something they shouldn't have done, ratted somebody out, got caught stealing something. Maybe they're on a sex beef and they're just afraid of everybody. Maybe they're just scared of their shadow and someone says, hey, why don't you go to PC? You'll be protected there. Or maybe their lawyer said, why don't you sign into PC because I can get you out quicker if that happens. And there's guys in PC who aren't rats. They're not sex offenders. They didn't do anything wrong except listen to their lawyer.
Right.
And they're
But they just can't handle, they don't feel they're strong enough to handle population. That's all.
Exactly. There's lots of guys like that. I had a brother come to me when I was a little skinny guy too, when I was in Bath, and he said, yeah, I got to say this before someone else does, but there was a list going on in Millhaven of guys to rat out bosses, crime leaders. So he said, I said that you owed me I owed you money from the Don jail and you'd probably kill me. So I couldn't go to none of the other jails. I had to go to camp. And his class officer said, you're lying. I know him really good. He's got 2 cousins on the range that you're on now. If you did owe him that money, those 2 cousins would take care of you. So admit you're lying. And he goes, yeah, I was lying. But imagine that there was a list with my name on it in Millhaven. People could use to get to lower security by saying I was threatening him. He had the balls to walk up to me. And I said, why did you say that? Why did you put me at risk? And he said, I was so scared to come here because I thought it was a really tough place. And that's my only option out. I said, well, then look around. He was only doing 2 years. I said, you'll be out of here in 6 months. Look around and say to yourself how stupid you were for listening to that. Within a couple of days, he came back and he said, what a pussy joint this is. So that was bad at the time. So that's how that goes, man. So it's all perception. And
Right.
doing time is that. It's all perception. The thing is that, listen, my worst day out here, let's say I almost got hit by a car. My worst day. Let's say I did get hit by a car, which happened to me last year. Bang, I got hit by a car. So that's a bad day for me. That worst day out here is better than my best day in prison. There's nowhere else to explain that.
That's so true.
Yeah, I can't explain it any way. I was at the top of the game in prison. I ran the crew. I ran shit. I put myself in the position of leadership. I was appointed and elected to a lot of leadership positions. So I was able to carve out some fun in prison. I got goodies that other guys didn't get. I was able to get things that other guys didn't get. And I was able to carve out some fun. Not only that, I started the first Kids Day social, carving out fun for my kids. I was part of the guys that got trailer visits into the system. That's more fun. I'm the guy that got cable into most of the systems. That's more fun. So I was doing those kind of things to have fun. And all that fun I talk about ends in 5 minutes. Because
Right.
that's all the fun I had in 33 years is the sum of 5 minutes of fun in 33 years.
So,
So-
Zero Gun Violence has a question. He said, how did either of you mentally survive? How did you mentally survive?
Because I used the tactics and techniques passed down to me by my elders. And my elders were Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Bobby Seale, Bobby Hutton, Huey P. Newton, the Black Panther Party types, Franz Fanon, the writers, Nikki Giovanni, the poet, the last poets, the first dub group, the first rap group, you would say. Oh, that was my inspiration. And that was my thing. My thing was, I'm not alone. There's thousands of us suffering the same suffering. So just man up, do what you're supposed to do to get out. Do all the stuff that you're supposed to do to keep your sanity. And more so, do everything you can do not to lose your manliness. And what I say about that is the ability to look in the mirror and see the real you and not this deflection. Over time, it happens. You become weaker. And I'm not saying that you become feminine. I say you become weaker and you become less of a warrior. When you look in that mirror, see the warrior you are, because that's why you're there. You're there to learn that lesson. It's a warrior's lesson, truly, that you're learning. So be a strong warrior. Learn what you have to learn from other warriors who have done it. Listen, I did more time than Nelson Mandela. Truly, how did Nelson Mandela do it? It's the same thing. He was a warrior, a fighter. He fought for the rights of other people, and he did the same stuff we do. It's the only way you have. It's a mindset, not to weaken yourself and not to become addictive to stuff, the TV, cards, stuff, just stuff that you become addicted to that aren't good for you, junk food. Now you're 400 pounds sitting in your cell 10 years later. You don't want to do sports. It affects your mentality. It affects the metabolism in your body. You're just a big blob in prison. They don't mind that because you're not causing any trouble. You're in a weight pit working out. You're getting stronger. You're burning calories. You're focused. You're doing something. At the end goal is I'm just a fitter person. If I'm fitter, my brain is healthier. Therefore, I could digest more stuff.
Right. I think for me, I did a lot, and how I was able to, my mental health part at one time I felt was weakening, but I had to catch myself. But I had my support. My support was one of the biggest things for me going through my ordeal. I had one of my lawyers, Sean McDonald, and my hat goes off to him. He basically schooled me and kept me strong. And after I came out, I had to get my head tuned up. You know, I saw a psychologist for about 2 years, you know, just to get myself tuned up and, you know, to be on track and stuff like that, because you played a big role. And I think the other day I had the opportunity to be at the House of Commons, and they were asking about, the question was, they had $1 billion for gun buyback, and how would Keep Six use that money? And one of the things I mentioned was mental health and trauma, because being inside itself is a big trauma. And you have to, no matter how much you feel you're okay, you have to, kind of like your car, you have to tune it up and change your oil and, you know, put some new plugs in it. That's how I felt, you know what I mean, to be where I am today and have the support.
So what I say, guys, is that for every year that you spend in jail, it takes 1 year to come out of that. You spend 10 years in jail, it will be 10 years before you come out of it. I've been out of jail now 10 years because of the weight of the parole. Don't forget, I get the most stringent parole ever given to someone under Bill C-57. No one has got that. So the weight of this parole on me keeps me in that position where it's hard for me to breathe and I still got the man's knee on my neck is the best way to put it. And I feel that all the time. So it's hard for me to extract myself from the pain and seek a solution through mental counseling, we'll say, because I still have that weight on me. Once that weight is off you, it still takes 1 year to come out of it. So I'll use an examples because I have many of them. There was guys that were in my crew that had the shootout in 1972, and they never got into trouble again after that. So 1972, they went to prison, they got out, we never hung with each other, they lived different lives. They now, when they talk to me, they're in their mid to late 60s, when they talk to me, they still feel trauma from those days, from that time, from those stuff that had happened to them. And it's 40 years later, man. Well, 50 now, 50 some. It's a lot of years, decades later, and they're still traumatized by that. So the what prison is, so to get this succinctly, it's a state-ordered torture to get you to change your behavior to be acceptable by the state, so that your behavior is acceptable by the state. When the state fails at torturing you enough so that you don't flip your switch, then the state has to take the blame for the mayhem that may cause. Each individual is on his own and has to own up to his own stuff. When you talk about mental illness, there's stuff that pushes you in certain directions to cause to do certain things. So the thing is, the money it takes to help a person inside is far less than the money it takes to manage him out in the community when he's not well. If he's well, it's cheaper, but if he's not well, it's not cheaper. So the thing is you should try as soon as you could to make people as well as they can be before you release them. In our Canadian prison system, 98% of the people get released. I was on a range, again, with 4 cop killers. And two of those cop killers got out, and 2 died inside of cancer. 2 got out, 2 died inside. So even the two that I did all that time with, they got out and they're living pretty normal lives, not hurting, causing any conflict or breaking the law. So the point I'm trying to make is 98% of all Canadian prisoners will get out. With that in mind, then you should try to help those prisoners from the day of their sentence. I'm talking about the very day of their sentence, remove them from the madness of the East Detention Center and put them in an environment where they start to get nurtured. And here's my belief, boys, on 50 years of personal experience and a couple of 100 years on family experience. There was no need to put me in Millhaven. You only did that because it creates more money for you. I ended up in minimum security. I'm the same guy that you put in Millhaven. I'm the same guy that's in minimum security. You could have put me in minimum security first and saved me all that mental anguish, pain and suffering, murderous daily stuff that you see in the maximum security. And I could have been working on a farm, working myself to better myself, saving some money so I didn't have to rely on the government, doing all the stuff it takes to rehabilitate me. And here's what I say, and I say it often. There was a guard pointing a gun at me all the time in Millhaven. So one day I told him, you better stop doing that. I can't take it more. I'm going to have you taken care of. And you know what that meant. So he broke down and he said, you killed my friend. You killed my best friend. And every day you walk the yard, I just want to take you out. He actually said that to me. We're in maximum security jail. We're both filled with this hate. I phoned my lawyer and I said, where was I on the day that this cop got killed? He goes, everybody wants to know. I said, I was in 1B11 in Millhaven. How can they not know that? I was in prison when the cop got killed. In Millhaven prison, the most maximum secure prison in this country. How can they not know that? And yet when I went to court, they accused me of that and said they're going to charge me with that. So I had to wear that sticker. I didn't say anything because I wanted to see what rats would come out of the workforce. So I walked with that sticker back to Millhaven, cop killing sticker, just to see what would happen. And a year later, it was a year later, I then said that I wasn't there. That's the pain I suffered. Here's the thing, what happened. I go down to Collins Bay. I'm in Collins Bay. That same guy, a little bit of an attitude, still looking at me, still a little biting at the bit. I get over to the Ville and then Frontenac. I get to Frontenac. He's there. Hey, Rick, how you doing? How's everything going? If you need someone to take you out on your first pass, I'll take you out on that first pass. What changed him? The institution changed him. He had a max attitude, just like we did. But when he got to camp, he had a camp attitude, just like we did. So did I. So why didn't you start us both out in camp? We both would have been better off had you have done that. Had I screwed up in camp, yeah, I go back up the ladder. I go back to medium or max. But at least you give me that opportunity. And I'm going to say this. I know guys, I've done time with guys who went from reception to camp doing Life 25. They were the lucky ones because that is what's happening to them. They're going to be in camp a long time, not easy to do. They're going to be in camp for 22, 23 years before they can make a halfway house. But they're not in Millhaven for 10 years, and in Joyceville for 4 or 5 years and work their way down. So why can't all the jails be like the camps, except for one, where the bad guys that can't flip their switch for whatever reason end up? That's cheaper. So minimum security is cheaper than maximum security, and release onto the street. And I've been in halfway houses across this country, man. How do you take me from Millhaven and say I'm the worst guy? A warden said that I'm the most dangerous guy Rick, you're the most dangerous guy I ever met. And I said, I find that really strange because I really don't have a big Ipso file. And he says, well, you have people do stuff, we just can't catch you. But you're really dangerous. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm less dangerous than you, I think, because you got access to a gun. I don't. I mean, you know, who's more dangerous? So he said that to me when I was in minimum security. And what I said to myself, well, if he thinks I'm that dangerous, why am I here?
Right.
He's a senior administrator. Why am I here? Because it's a game that's being played with us, with the public, with their strong union. There's 21,000 of us. There's 11,000 parole officers. I don't know, 9,000 parole officers. I think 11,000 staff. There's support workers are 2 times us. A budget, the majority of a budget is 75 to 80% of a prison's operating budget is in staff pays. So where are we going with this? What are we really doing as a society? Put more guys in more halfway houses. Hard to do because the public says, I don't want them here. Black guys even harder. Keep in mind, I was in the first and only black halfway house in Canada.
Yeah.
the Cy and Henson house. And the community didn't lose their mind because it was in Parkdale. Parkdale was a little run down at that time. And they had a lot of black folks in the neighborhood because a poorer neighborhood. So the neighborhood didn't, but they tried at that time, 1979, they tried to put another halfway house on Dundas, just past Sororn. And the community protest went crazy and they didn't do it. So what I'd say to the government is, what would you rather have? Them protest that there's a group of people they really don't understand in the halfway house, or the opposite, those group of people that should be in the halfway house not committing crimes in the neighborhood because they have no options, they haven't been treated properly, they're suffering from mental illness, or they got out with nothing. And the only tools they have is the criminal tools that they developed prior to going to jail, because while in jail they didn't develop any more tools. They got out with the same toolbox they went in with. It was the criminal toolbox. No one gave them another set of tools to operate with.
And I just seen someone just said, I went to my family's house from prison. So more or less, I mean, I am aware that we could have individual leave a federal prison and go to a black family's house and be on parole, because it was a program. I don't know if you know about this, but there's a
I
program
understand that. So
in 1988.
Okay, I could explain that. So what it is they changed from halfway houses because there were so many guys, and because of the crack epidemic, doing short sentences, that they were filling up the halfway houses. So there's community residential facilities, and they turned that into private residential facilities. Glenn Flett, who was running Link, Lifers in the Community out west, really good program. He died a couple of years ago. His wife now keeps running it.
Sure.
Really good program. He has right now, or she has right now, a con living in the trailer beside her house.
Yeah.
So,
two. I think it's two.
Yeah, so you could put, no, there was one other guy that had 8 because they had a big farm in the Mission area in BC, and he had the room for them. So I don't know how many you could have, but I don't know how many people it takes to have that, but you just petition the government that you're willing to do that. And then the government pulls you in, assesses you, and there could be a guy living in your house that had done time, some brother that you're going to help. And back in the days, there was helping each other was part of the game because you expected someone to go to jail. But I'm telling you, the game has changed now because people are shooting at children and they're shooting at women. And there's less sympathy for those kind of guys. It's like, in our day, you're going to PC if you hurt a woman or a kid. You were automatically PC'd. That was it. There was no way out of it, man. And now there's so many guys doing it, they're not going to PC. And they're in your face. And the thing is do I really want to help you? Do I really want to do that? That's questions that people ask. I would say to the guy, I would say to the Canadian public that guy seems like a real bad guy now. We want to eat him for breakfast because he shot a kid, or he shot at a woman, or he shot at someone and missed someone, like the Eaton Center guy hit a little kid in the head. You might want to do something to that person. But just like the cop killers, they can turn it around too, man. They can turn it around to be these productive persons in society again. So that's what you have to weigh. You have to weigh, how much help do I want to really give these guys? How much help can I give these guys? How much help should I give these guys? And are we all in this together? That's what it boils down to. Are we all in this together? So I'm under the impression the more help I give, I feel better about it. But we are all in this together at the end of the day.
Of course.
At the end of the day, we are.
What a lot of people need, I think, sometimes just someone to believe in them and to have some support. And I feel that's lacking. We can't expect, when we're dealing with the system, these people don't know anything about where we come from, our background, our struggles, or so forth. They're just going by information that's copy and paste on our file.
My father used to pick guys. Keep in mind, I'm in the penitentiary. So is his other son and a lot of his nephews and his nieces, because I had nieces robbing banks too. They ended up in P4W. So he's got all these family members in the pen, and he took it upon himself to contact the provincial government. He would go to Mimico, pick guys up from Mimico, bring them to Alexander Park to do cleaning work release stuff, to help out. He couldn't help us. We were too far away and too deep into the system to help, but he could help those other people. It takes more community guys like that. It takes more guys in the community not to talk shit, but to step up to the plate and say, listen, man, how do we help? Well, just like you said, the one way to help is they had writing programs with a list of brothers in jail who you could write letters to. I had a friend contact me once through someone else, and he said, I need you to get a bunch of people to write me letters because I'm in Marquette, which was in Michigan. Marquette, so Marquette, it was one of those Supermax jails. And he said, because the man is killing brothers up here who don't get visits. They want to know that you have somebody looking out for you. So we write them letters just to keep them alive, man.
Yeah, well, we have it going on right here in Toronto, at the Toronto East. Guys haven't seen mail. It's pretty much obsolete. They don't get their mail. They're locking them up now they're taking away visits. They're taking away their phone calls. So you have an individual that don't even hear from the opportunity to talk to anybody outside.
So that kind of heavy-handedness, that kind of heavy-handedness in the provincial institution always heightens itself in the penitentiary. All those angst, and what it is the federal institutions should pay more. The guys that run the feds, they should pay more attention to what's going on in the provincial systems, because that's where the headaches come from. Because I said this, I 30-something years ago, I was talking to a warden, and I seen this development in the Don Jail East and West Detention Center. I seen this angst when they started the first jungle range, they called it. And I said, that was a bad idea, man. It's a bad idea. And they said, no, man, it's better for us. I said, no, it's not. Not in the end, it won't be. And the thing is they can take the jungle range, segregate it now, because they already started they got 20, 30-year experience now denigrating that particular section of the prison. Right. And they use it to threaten white guys. We'll put you in the jungle range. And some white guys are really cool. They know a lot of guys that, yeah, okay, so what? So it defeated their purpose. And then why call it the jungle range? You're calling it something less than all the other ranges. Right. And that started then. And I said, that's the start of this thing here. And one day you're not going to be able to stop it. Everybody will be in the jungle range. The whole institution will be called the jungle range. That's what I hear you alluding to, that the East Detention Center is different. It has these unique problems. It has the problems that enable the prison administration to treat those guys illegally and differently. It's illegal not to give a guy. You can get a life sentence for messing with someone's mail. If you're in the penitentiary, grievances. I forget what section it is. I forget it was, I think 208. But anyways, in the CCRAs. But anyways, you mess with someone's mail, it can carry a life sentence. Right. And they all go by those rules. They know how those rules work, and they know you will take them to the limit. Well, why aren't the guys in the East Detention Center trying to press federal charges against the person handing out or holding the mail?
Well, that's the problem right there. It's a generation now that don't know their rights and how to go about things. It's not like the days when you're doing time or I'm doing time. Well, we know we did everything on paper. We're filing grievance. We're doing lawsuits and so forth. We have a set of people now that are sitting there and they don't know what to do. They're not taking the time to educate themselves. You might have one person who will take that step, but then everybody's scared of repercussion.
Been there, done that. How many grievances have you done? I've done thousands of them. So how many have you done where guys wouldn't sign them after 2 or 3 weeks of your work, putting them into this perfect position because they're too scared to sign? A guy did all that work, he won't sign it now? Well, man, I'll get in trouble. I said, you're already in trouble. That's why the grievance is here for.
You're behind bars,
but that's understandable because that's the pressure the man puts on you and the control of that unit. He instills fear that if you fight him, that you're doing. You put too many grievances against us, we're going to try to hurt you for that. And I go, I'm only going to put another one in now.
He just made me give me another one, right? So
you just gave me another excuse. I'm going to put another one in. So right. Yeah, you have to have balls to do that, and that's the thing. But I think the win is unity in Gandhi's method. I think that's the way to go. But it's hard. It's hard to do it because everybody wants to get high and disassociate themselves from their reality. If they go into a meditative mindset and learning in meditative mindset, it's better for you in the long run it's better for you. It pushes back against them. They can't hurt you. They can't use the excuses. You're not always trying to reach out to your woman or your family to make moves and get stuff done. It frees them with your insanity also. So there's a lack of discipline. And I'll say it again. And Martin Luther King, I'm not a proponent of Martin Luther King because he wasn't a gun-toting person. I admire the revolutionaries more, the ones who literally went into war zones. Those are the guys that I gravitated towards. But the thing is, his method was there. You have to learn how to do time. You have to teach yourself. You have to expect that these are the things that are going to happen when you're doing time. So you don't want to burden your family with your bullshit. You don't want to burden your wife and your kids with your nonsense. And the thing about when you play a game in prison, I've been in prison a long, long time. And I think I got only 2 or 3 or 4 institutional charges. Yet I've been in the hole in every institution I've ever been in for political reasons. Charges that they had to throw out or just threw me in the hole until they could figure something out. So the whole thing is you got to discipline yourself. To fight back. That's the whole thing. To fight back and walk proud and tall, you have to, man. You have to fight back. Man.
Before we go, because our hour is coming up, just give one positive statement to young people out there about going through the system and about staying on a narrow, straight path. What's your
thing is, I said, when I was gang banging, when I was 14, 15 years old, and I had a machine gun and I was running around crazy, I thought that I was going to die at 25. That's what I really thought. I thought there's no way I could live past 25. And Crookendale, the one who got killed by the police, he said to me one day, how long are you going to live? I said, 25. What about you? He said 27. He died at just 2 or 3 days before his 27th birthday. So that negative philosophy worked for him. So here's the thing. I didn't die at 25. So all that craziness I did thinking that I was going to die, I'm here an old man now, still suffering the same suffering because of that stuff. So all these years. So I deluded myself. So what I say, the one thing I say to people is stop lying to yourself. You're never going to be the top crime boss like Al Capone. He's dead. You're never going to be Scarface. He's dead in that movie. All the guys you think you want to be are dead or going to jail. The ones who made it, always ask yourself, why didn't so-and-so, he got in trouble, why didn't he? And you start looking at those rarities and those guys that had certain skills, certain disciplines, and they stay set into those skills and disciplines in order to make it work. So the whole key in life is to discipline yourself to walk a certain path for as long as you can and pull onto that path as much help as you can. When you're a criminal, you don't get much help. When you're a non-criminal, you get more help. I'm going to say this. I've always had a woman come in and visit me in prison. I spent 33 years in prison, but only those women and my mother and father would come and see me. I mean, I had brothers that never saw me in prison. None of my crew ever came up to prison and see me. They all got out and just went their separate ways, man. So the whole thing is take the people that are really going to help you are the people that are around you now. Any family members that are around you now. But if you keep screwing up, you keep doing stupid stuff over and over again, even those people get tired too. Because you're like a broken wheel that can't be fixed. You're one of those people that need psychological help. So pull it together. And the one thing I'm going to say is there's hope, man. There is hope. I still got 10 years left, man. I still got 10 years left. I've been in jail for 50 years, and I still got 10 years left. And what I hold on to is there's still hope. And you're going to say, hope for what? Freedom. There's hope for freedom. And that's what it's all about. I keep pushing for freedom. I don't have it now, but I'm still working on it. I might make it, I might not, but I'm not going to stop working to try to be free. That's it, man.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you so much. And where can people get your book from?
It's in chapters. Yeah, it's in chapters. It's been there. It's you go to chapters now, they got more cups and pottery than they do books. I don't know if people are eating more and reading less. But it's in chapters. You can get it. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And folks, I had the opportunity on being on Ricky's podcast. flip your switch. Go to Keep Six YouTube channel and watch that. That's a really, really powerful one. Ricky talked about my personal experience going through the system. We talked about segregation, Millbrook, who don't even know about it. And it was a very, very powerful interview. So please check it out on YouTube, Keep Six YouTube channel, or Ricky's YouTube channel, flip this switch, and you can see it there. Please follow it. Freedom,
And my
freedom
book,
is a
my
must.
book's
Thanks for
called
following.
my book's called the Hard Times and Crimes of Ricky Atkinson, leader of the Dirty Tricks Gang.
All right. So please
Yep.
check out Ricky's book and check
There you
out our
go.
interview at Keep Six YouTube. Ricky Atkinson, Dirty Trick Gang, and Flip Your Switch. Man, thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, please, you can drop your questions here, or you can jump on a quick minute before our time run out. We'd love to hear from you. We like to have these real conversation, a real old school, gentleman who knows about the system. We just want to educate the community, use our own personal experiences or challenges to educate young people, not to go down that path, but make good, positive decisions, and also to have the support that they might need. All right. So if anybody has any questions, please jump on real quick if you like. Louis, you're welcome. Zero Gun Violence, you're welcome. It's our pleasure. It's always nice. And thanks again for your support. Ricky, thanks a lot. As always, man.
Yep.
Appreciate it. All right. Thank
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
everyone.
Listen, guys, you got your elders like Louis, man. Louis good people. He's an elder. Listen to him, man. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Hold on one second. I think somebody wants to jump on here. Let's see who it is. The studio. Are you there?
I need more light. The light has run out. It's not on.
All right, not a problem. All right, that's our hour long. Please follow us. We're gonna upload this to the Keep Six Instagram Live, where you can watch this if you missed it. It was a really, really good conversation. Ricky Atkinson, thank you so much for being a part of Keep Six podcast tonight and for talking about your experience and the great knowledge and your book and so forth. Please.
Yep. Anytime, brother. Anytime, man.
It's always good to have support. You know what I mean? Again, everyone, if you'd like to watch this segment, you can watch it on the Keep Six Instagram Live, or you can watch Ricky's interview with me on Keep Six YouTube channel. He did an interview with me maybe about a year and a half ago, 2 years. You're welcome to watch it. It's a very, very powerful interview. You are welcome to join us. Reese, how you doing? We can't hear you. You're muted.
Hello?
Yep, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for speaking about the life inside. I got to go through the process in the later dates.
Mm-hmm.
Where, thank you so much for what you've done as prisoner justice inside. I've heard the stories, and thank you so much, because there's so much inhumane stuff that happens in there that doesn't get a light outside, and I'm thank you for having these discussions, because these are discussions that need to be spoken more about, because it's wild. The mail, yeah, there's a whole bunch. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you, Richard and Richard.
Yep. No problem, man. Keep up the struggle, man. That's what it's about.
The book you have, did you write it all yourself, or did you have assistance on editing
What
it?
happened is I started writing it in the Don Jail with a pencil. When I got to the pen, I got a typewriter. I was on the committee, so I was able to get a computer eventually. Then when I got out, I had the manuscript. It was 500 pages. I gave it to an editor. He crunched it up to the 300-page mark, sellable, and then we put it out for sale and it sold. So yeah, every single word in the book is my words. He just edited it, moved them around, pushed them together.
Okay. How long was the whole process in doing it? Because the
I
scariest
started in '97 when I was first arrested by the airport, and it was 217 that it came out, man.
Wow.
So yeah,
One thing that hit me really hard during the discussion was the life experience of a prisoner when they're inside for the duration and the trauma that they encounter while inside. They still take some of that with them when they leave, and it takes a while for that to go away, which is
yeah.
shocking, where you would assume right when you leave, boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it didn't happen. But it's a serious situation where it happened, and it's wild. Thank you for that one, because I had that question all the time, like, because it's not like that, but thoughts or flashbacks from those times where I tried to ignore the mindset or the situations that you may encounter where individuals in there, but you're dealing with like a bigger prison now when you're outside that prison, so it's just dealing
Yeah,
with.
man, exactly. So you maintain that same discipline and mentality. If you can't leave the earth is your prison. So live accordingly, you know?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much
Okay,
for
great.
joining us tonight. All right, everyone. Thank you. That's it. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll be having a discussion. Join us on mental health. So please join us next week.